的敏感性来源于野外的阅视无数。那么接下来我们要看看它都用什么设备来拍摄标本和野生动物影像。
And this is for doing museum work. And I've got 2 Canon 7D Mark IIs in here that I use at the same time. That's just got a 60mm macro, and I use that for photographing the whole specimen. And I'll photograph it dorsally, and I'll photograph it ventrally. And when I do it ventrally, I try and make sure that none of the ventral scales or subcaudals are obscured, so that I can get the scale counts from the photographs later and save time when I'm working through a lot of specimens, because time is at a premium when I'm working in a museum, and I've only got so many days there, and I want to get the data from as many specimens as possible. And if I'm going to sit down and do all the ventral and subcaudal scale counts for every specimen while I'm there, I'll only get a third as many specimens done as I would by doing this. If I photograph the specimen and I make sure that when I photograph it none of the ventrals and subcaudals are obscured, I can then count the scales later from the photographs, how I do that. So that's what I use that camera for. And I'm using these macro twin light flash guns, because macro work you've got to illuminate it with flash, so I've got those. Now the other camera I use at the same time is another 7D Mark II, and this one has got a very special lens on that Canon make, Nikon don't make one. This is an MPE 65mm macro. Now this is what I use for very small snakes, for doing finite detail of the head scales. I can actually crank this lens out to 5 times life size. If I put a ×2 converter on, I can shoot at 10 times life size. I could fill the frame with 1mm. Now I never need to do that, but for the purposes of the lab work, I'm usually working at 1 to 2 to 3 times life size. And what I will want to do is I will set this up in a tripod with a display next to it, so that I'm using this to focus. Then I will take photographs of the dorsum of the head. Then I will take photographs of left and right sides of the head, and then I will photograph the ventral side of the head, so that I have a series of 4 photos, and they are all taken on manual, not autofocus, which means that the lens, I'm not doing some closer than the others. They're all at exactly the same distance, and I'm turning the dead snake, the snake specimen round, and I get a series of photographs which I can then, and I'll just step over here, I can then use as the basis for that. This is what I'm ultimately aiming to achieve with this sort of photography. And the whole snake, ventral, this snake had actually been opened up prior to me finding it in the museum. But there's a dorsal photo and there's a ventral photo, and that's my specimens museum kit. This is my field kit, and in here I have got a Canon mirrorless R5 and a backup camera, which at the moment is a 90D. That's my backup in case I had a problem. And then I've got an array of different lenses here, macro lenses, wide angle lenses, and this is for photographing reptiles and amphibians in the field rather than that's my museum kit, this is my field kit. But both of them need a support kit, and this is all the extra stuff that I need to ship out when I'm working. That's a backdrop for when I'm doing my photography in the museums. Set of calipers, tripod, any loop batteries. They are really good. I just don't like the idea of disposable batteries anymore, because where are they being disposed of? I used to give them to villagers when they were running loose down on power and weren't good enough for my flash guns. I used to give them to villagers. And I started thinking, well, what do they do when they're no good? They just throw them in the creek. So I started thinking, no, it's not right to be using disposable batteries. So I have rechargeable batteries, which are expensive, but in the end they save you money because you're not having to buy new ones all the time. So, you know, and I've got that's like my field kit, and I've got a spare display for my laptop in there. That's the case that I would send in the hold, and either of these are the right size to fit in the overhead, so they're actually carry-on bags. At the moment they're a little heavy, so you have to take some stuff out, but these are designed to be carried on aircraft. And of course that's not all the gear. I've got more spare gear in that old Pelican case down there. I've got another 3 camera bodies up here, older camera bodies, which I generally use with my students. When I'm teaching them to do macro photography, I take my old camera bodies and they can have a play with those.
从和世界各地博物馆的联系到拍标本这种细节工作，担任教授的马克奥谢都能给学生提供帮助。资源丰富的大牛导师形象，在这几天的交流里变得愈发具象化了。毕竟能在课堂上就带你游历世界的导师可太罕见了。而行万里路的基础是读万卷书。奥谢教授在拍摄纪录片前从不打无准备的仗，他会花很长时间和团队研究了解目标物种、生态和文化，是大量的知识储备才成就了一部部影响世界的纪录片。这也是为什么你能在他的家中看到这座堪比顶级高校的两爬学图书馆。
Welcome to my library. When I moved into this house in the year 2000, my late brother, he sadly passed away in 2012, my late brother Nick, he was marvellous. Anything, he could build anything, worked on cars, built houses. So when I said, Nick, I need a library, he said, I'll build it for you. And he built me this Edwardian style library with the downlights and everything. And I thought, that's great, that'll last me forever. But I'm already filled it up, 24 years, and the library is already full, and I'm having to spill out into other rooms. But this area and my study next door are the centre of my universe, because I can settle down with just these 2 rooms and write all my books, my papers and so forth, prepare lectures and everything else, because of all the information that I have around. Well in excess of 4,000 books in here, mostly on herpetology, reptiles and amphibians, but there's also books on prehistoric animals, extinction and so forth, because I teach on that, and also on some invertebrates and fish, but a lot of those I move up to a room upstairs simply because there wasn't room in here. The bulk of the books in here are on reptiles and amphibians, but as I say, I have a lot of books. I love books. Books are the transference of knowledge down the generations. If you publish something in a book and the book survives long after you're gone, people can read it and learn your thoughts and your beliefs and your understandings. So it's essential that we conserve books. And I'm old enough to appreciate tangible hard copy books that you can actually feel and touch. I think that PDFs and e-books, whilst they have their place when you're travelling, they have no soul. This is a tangible book. I can hold it. If it was old, a really old book, I've got books in here over 100 years old, you can smell the age on them, and that's history, and people long dead have handled those books. If I may use a misquote, a day without books is like a day without sunshine.
没有足够的阅读，走得再远也只是过客。现在由奥谢教授撰写的《蛇类博物馆》中文版正在火热销售中。这本数千人读过的蛇类宝典，你可以在我的评论区置顶和视频框下链接找到。手捧此书，你不仅可以认识来自世界各地的600种蛇类，还可以熟知奥谢教授在本集演示过的蛇类鳞片形态特征，以及这些物种间的分类关系、食性生态和人文故事。我相信这本书会是带你走进对两爬了解更进一步的基石。已经买过的读者还可以入手同系列9本的超绝自然博物馆套装。这里除了有能让你解锁数千个物种的主体书外，还有多达12册总价值超2000元的定制赠品，比如大开本的奥杜邦鸟类，还有作者亲签的西方博物学文化等等。这个超值套装是北大出版社专门为我的观众准备的，只有20份且仅售这一次。这一箱的书到家，你也可以拥有自己的博物馆了。 毕竟真正的探险在实现好奇心的路上，而这条路不止在野外，也在书房和实验室里。好，以上3集我们一起跟随奥谢教授走过了惊险的丛林与荒野，听他讲述了纪录片拍摄中的险象环生，又走进了实验室、教室和图书馆，全面了解了这位伟大两爬学家的研究和工作。他的故事不仅属于他自己，也属于所有热爱自然、热爱两栖爬行动物的人。那么他的故事给你带来了哪些启发呢？欢迎大家在评论区留下寄语或读后感，之后我会翻译转达给奥谢教授。本期点赞过万，我还会加更一期之前他通过线上视频回答的几位观众留言的问题，这些问题更专业也更有深度，也许他的答案会让你看到不一样的世界。我是冬青，别走开，我再给你开个小灶。
This is a dart poison frog, and its scientific name is Dendrobates leucomelas. Leuco means white, melas means black. You could see when these specimens arrived in the Paris Museum, when they were described 150 years ago, they were described as black and white. You see this frog in the wild,
Black and yellow.
it's black and yellow.
Right.
Now, in preservative, the yellow pigment disappears, so you end up with the white bands. And that affects green animals too. Because if you've got an emerald tree boa in preservative, or a green tree monitor in preservative, it's not green, it's sort of blue to cyan. And again, that's because the green is a pigment that is a combination of yellow and blue. And if the yellow disappears, you're left with the blue cyan. And that's led to a number of things that are green in nature being called cyano so-and-so other, or azura so-and-so, meaning cyan coloured or blue coloured. So it can be misleading, and you can't change the name afterwards just because it's not accurate. I've got 5 specimens here, 5 snakes, and a total of 10 heads, which you think is not possible, but it is, because each of them has got 2 heads. It's just a freak of nature. You can have 2-headed animals of any kind. It's called dicephalic, or like conjoined twins. Basically, in the egg, there was a double embryo, so it developed 2 front ends, but it only ever developed 1 hind end. And quite often they are born or hatched dead. This one survived for some time, actually lived and fed, but unless they are in captivity, they normally get taken by predators. In captivity, it is possible to keep them alive and actually raise them to adults. But it's just a freak. It's not supposed to have 2 heads.